There's no I in team, but there is an I in win. For today's video, we are going to pick the best NBA team based on how many designated All-Stars they have, all the way from 0 to 4. Now before we do this, I do have to set a few quick rules. Rule 1, the roster has to have designated All-Stars, not near All-Stars or previous year All-Stars. Take for example the 2010 Cavs. Sure, Mo Williams and Big Z made All-Star teams in the past, but in the year 2010, LeBron was the only designated All-Star who got selected to play in that All-Star weekend, so this specific roster will fall under the one All-Star category. The second rule is that I'm only factoring teams since the All-Star game's inception, which was on March 2nd, 1951. It's hard to put teams before that date in the 0 All-Star category because that is comparing teams with All-Star snubs on their rosters to teams who have 0 selections simply because the event didn't exist yet. This also includes or excludes the 1999 lockout season that didn't have an All-Star weekend. So without further ado, let's rebound onto that ranking. We have to start from the bottom and choose the best roster in NBA history with 0 All-Stars. Now if we included the 1999 lockout season, this would be an easy pick and the award would go to the 1999 Spurs. And if we included pre-All-Star weekend teams, this would easily go to the 1950 Minneapolis Lakers. But what I'm looking for is a team that had an All-Star opportunity but didn't get any selections due to being snubbed. And with that in mind, some runners-up include the 2006-07 Golden State Warriors, the 2010-11 Memphis Grizzlies, the 1993-94 Denver Nuggets, and the 1989-90 Cleveland Cavaliers. A lot of these teams are really solid teams, and the Warriors, Grizzlies, and Nuggets made some pretty epic playoff upsets as 8th seeded teams beating number 1 seeded teams. Memphis beat the number 1 2011 Spurs, the Nuggets beat the number 1 seeded Supersonics, and the Warriors beat the number 1 seeded Dallas Mavericks. Now in terms of seeding, the 1989-90 Cavs placed the highest out of all these teams, and you can argue they were playing in a tougher conference during the early 90s. In terms of All-Star snubs, you can argue that the Cavs got snubbed the most out of all these runners-up, considering just one season before this, they had 3 players being Mark Price, Brad Daugherty, and Larry Nance, who were all All-Stars just one season ago, and this season they still played at a really high level, near the level they played the year before. The 90s Cavs in general are one of the most underrated teams in NBA history. Mark Price was somewhat of a prototype Steph Curry, a point guard who can shoot threes lights out, and was a part of the 40-50-90 club in terms of efficiency. For this reason, my pick for the best team to have 0 All-Stars is the 1990 Cavaliers. Next up, we have the best NBA team to only have 1 designated All-Star on their roster. Some runners-up include the 2010 Cleveland Cavaliers, the 2010-2011 Dallas Mavericks, the 2003-04 Detroit Pistons, the 2002-03 San Antonio Spurs, the 1994-1995 Houston Rockets, and the 1997-1998 Chicago Bulls. This category would actually be a really tough call to make, and there is a long debate on who gets second place. However, picking first place isn't that challenging thanks to the GOAT of the sport, Michael Jordan. The 97-98 Bulls had a 62-20 record, finished first in the East. This is also the 6th ring and 6th finals MVP for MJ, as this team beat the Utah Jazz for a second time in the finals. This team has legendary players like Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, who while weren't designated All-Stars for this roster, played at a really high level during this season. So this pick goes to the 98 Bulls. Moving on, we have the best NBA team to have 2 designated All-Stars on their roster. Now this one has a ton of runners-up, so while I'm only listing off a few, there are literally hundreds of rosters with more than 2 All-Stars on their team, and we could do a separate video for the best NBA duos. Some runners-up include the 95-96 Chicago Bulls, the 2001 Los Angeles Lakers, the 68-69 Boston Celtics, the 06-07 San Antonio Spurs, the 84-85 Lakers, and the 67-68 Philadelphia 76ers. Much like the first category, the real debate debate would be finding out who comes in second place. However, this video is finding the best team at each All-Star selection total, and the best team in this category is arguably one of the best teams of all time, period. That team is the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. The 1995-1996 Chicago Bulls has the second best record in NBA history at 72-10. As the old saying goes, first is the worst, but second is the best. 73-9 is nice, but 72-10 has a better ring to it. This pick goes to the Bulls. And now for one of the hardest parts of this video, which is the best big three in NBA history. This category probably would need its own dedicated video to flesh out each prominent big three and then rank the top runners up. But for a more bite-sized video, here is just a slice of the very considerable candidates. Some runners up include the 2013-2014 Miami Heat, the 86-87 Los Angeles Lakers, the 2015-2016 Cleveland Cavaliers, the 2014-2015 Golden State Warriors, the 90-91 Boston Celtics, the 07-08 Boston Celtics, the 89-90 Detroit Pistons, and the 1966-1967 Philadelphia 76ers. There are actually a ton more, and maybe in the future we can individually rank and break down the top 25 big threes in NBA history. Now, just picking one will be a challenge, but if I can only go with one, my choice is going to be the 86-87 Los Angeles Lakers. Pretty much all the big threes listed here have at least one MVP or an MVP caliber player, but the 86-87 Los Angeles Lakers have two MVP caliber players in their primes, being Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You have arguably the greatest point guard and arguably the greatest center in their prime on the same team, alongside an extremely talented James Worthy, who is just about to enter his prime at 25 years old as a two-time All-Star, averaging nearly 20 points per game himself. The 91 Celtics, 2015 Warriors, and 67 76ers are all very close runner-ups, and we could also throw in the Miami Heat into that mix. And while you can make arguments for Wilt individually being better than Kareem or Magic, finding a second undisputed MVP caliber teammate will be tough to match both Kareem and Magic in their primes, which is why the Lakers got my pick for this category. And last but not least, we have the best big four in NBA history. Big fours are pretty rare, so here are a list of some of the great runners-up. The 61-62 Boston Celtics, the 74-75 Boston Celtics, the 2010-2011 Boston Celtics, the 97-98 Los Angeles Lakers, the 2017-2018 Golden State Warriors, the 82-83 Philadelphia 76ers, the 2014-2015 Atlanta Hawks, and the 05-06 Detroit Pistons. There are a few more, but they are mainly just doubles of the same roster, like say the 2017 Warriors and the 2018 Warriors. Now, before I make a selection, I want to say that if Kobe was near his prime or in his prime, I would easily choose the Los Angeles Lakers, but in 1998, Kobe just became an All-Star at 19 years old and was averaging 15 points per game. Still really good, but that 98 Lakers squad only has one MVP caliber player, being Shaq. This is a close call between the 61-62 Celtics, 2017-2018 Golden State Warriors, and 82-83 Philadelphia 76ers. All three of these teams have two MVP caliber players, and all three are NBA champions. Not only are the rosters so close when comparing on paper talent, what makes this super difficult is comparing the eras. We are comparing the 60s against the 80s against the modern day NBA. It's especially hard since the three-point line wasn't introduced until 1979, so we don't know how well the 62 Celtics perimeter defense would be. The Warriors are the only team with back-to-back big fours for both the 2017 and 2018 season, while also having the same listed All-Stars, so you could argue that they might have the most chemistry as a unit, and they play the hardest to guard basketball with how well they move the ball and shoot threes. The 83 76ers were a great rebounding team, but a mediocre three-point shooting team, so they would have trouble outshooting the Warriors, but might be able to keep things close by grabbing up the boards. This is a really close call, but I am going with the Warriors for this pick. The sheer speed and lights out shooting this team has is really tough to compete with. If you disagree with this pick, I would really be interested to hearing your arguments to how the 83 76ers or 62 Celtics could beat this team. So to recap, the best team with 0 All-Stars is the 89-90 Cleveland Cavaliers. The best team with 1 All-Star is the 97-98 Chicago Bulls. The best team with 2 All-Stars is the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. The best team with 3 All-Stars is the 86-87 Los Angeles Lakers. And the best team with 4 All-Stars All-Stars is the 2017-2018 Golden State Warriors. Let me know what you think of these picks, since a lot of them are really close, with good arguments for or against them. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to dunk on that like button and subscribe with notifications turned on. I'm Rebound Rewind, and I'll fast forward to you later.